All right, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. How you guys doing? Hey, Navarro, Juanes, how you doing? All right, I'm just checking the audio. Cool. All right. Cool. So everything is working, chat and everything. Hey, Alex, how you doing? An extra miler here, the first one from today. Can you guys hear me all right? West 3D Art saying that it is a bit quiet. Let me know if it's the same thing for everyone. Otherwise, West might have to check his audio. Loud and clear? Cool. It's all good to go. Awesome. Perfect. So here is where we left last time, where we left off. And yeah, we're working on this weird creature. I don't know still what I have no idea what this is going to end up being, but I have some references. Let me just bring it up so that you can see. So I'm using pure ref obviously for the references, and I have a few things that well, not a few things, but like certain areas of these references that I would like to incorporate into the design, like, you know, let's see, like this sort of stuff, all of these spiky details. And although this is not necessarily part of the mantis, it's more like the dry flower or whatever this is, I would like to incorporate certain things like this and just recreate this sort of web or spike somewhere, this sort of thing as well, and this type of stuff. So something weird and creepy. This one is pretty incredible. So maybe some repetitive pattern, something like that we can incorporate. So that's the idea, really. Just wanted to show you so that you know what I have on the other screen as a reference. But yeah, so far we have kind of like a non-symmetrical bug or worm. So we're gonna work on a bit more of the blocking, just refine sort of the transitions, and I'm gonna start adding some of those filaments, or I don't know exactly how to call it, but yeah, we'll just call it filaments for the time being. Yep, so let's go ahead and get started with that. So I have my move brush, and I have done, hopefully you've noticed, I've done some updates to the graphics so that hopefully they will work a little bit better with the current UI. So now you can see everything that I might use here at the bottom with the custom UI. All right, so with the move brush, I'm gonna do some tweaks for the, I don't know, let's call this one the tail of the character. So, and then we can use the smooth brush just to simplify some of those points where we use C-spheres. So the points where the C-spheres were, they're pretty sharp, and the in between those C-spheres things look a little bit more straight. So just trying to find a more organic look for that. Let's go ahead and enable AccuCurve. All right. So something like that. We can go ahead and start subdividing this. I mean, the geometry of this part is quite clean, so you can use any approach. We have Dynamesh on this one, on those pieces at the top, but for the bottom we can go ahead and subdivide a few more times, and we can start using something like the clay brush. I'm going to use the clay custom, the custom clay that I use, and this is basically another version of the build-up clay. just that allows me to have more control over the the details that it generates, like sort of crevices. It's not very obvious in this case because this mesh is still pretty low res, but it allows me to very quickly add volumes like so. I'm gonna also reduce the intensity of the smooth brush. And I think there are not areas that are too close to each other, so we could potentially just redynamesh everything together. But I think it just, just to show you a different workflow, I guess I'm gonna keep it simple. Alright, so essentially what I'm doing here is just adding a few pieces of volume so that it doesn't look like just a tube, right? And with the same brush we can start adding a few, not wrinkles, but like folds, just to give an indication of these being, having some more volume and thickness. So when this part of the body or the tail bends over itself, it just creates these fat deposits or wrinkles. So that's just a simple way to indicate that there's some thicker mass around there. And it doesn't have to be perfect at this point. This is still part of the blocking, right? All right. So you see, even with just those little strokes, like I said, this is not detailing anything. This is just blocking the volume and just thinking about the silhouette a little bit more. Just with these few strokes, this part is starting to look a little bit better and more interesting, at least more part of the same character, not just that blockout that we had before, which was essentially just a tube. And another thing, when going through this process of refining the blockout, I guess another thing that I like to do is just to, especially when I'm working with no symmetrical objects, is just to keep it asymmetrical as asymmetrical as possible. So that means not just concentrating on one side or in one area to add details, but rotate throughout the entire model and just making sure that you see it from different angles and that everything is working from different angles, of course. And although I have 4 levels of subdivisions, the total count for this piece is only 30,000 points. So it's still pretty low res, and I want to keep it that way while I set up these kind of like folds. And then of course, if we need more resolution later, we can just keep subdividing it. And the only reason I'm sort of like using subdivision is because, again, the original geometry of this piece came from C-spheres, and that gives you a pretty decent topology. At least because the size of the C-spheres were pretty consistent, so you can get something going that, again, like the polygons are consistent or proportional. That's more like what I was trying to say. They're all consistent, but yeah, the size of them, they're more proportional. Whereas if you have like a larger C-sphere and then you connect it to a smaller one, the difference between the two will create different size in polygons. And in that case, you might have to do a retopology or not, depending on what you're trying to do. Just trying to do a quick recap of why I'm using this subdivision in this case. All right. Cool. Let's see the chat. Cool. Hey Pablo, how can you change the thumbnail color? You mean this one right here? What's the optimal speed at which you would say a character concept needs to get done? It takes whatever it takes. As long as I mean, that's a really hard question. there's not a specific time, I would say, for a concept, like depending on how much details you need to show in the concept. If it's a concept sculpt that probably needs to go into production later on, might as well do it a little bit better so that you have more of a base to refine later and get to that production stage faster. I don't know. It's I wouldn't say that more than a it's a really hard question. it would have to be based on the brief. So like for a full character that is pretty complex, a couple of days, 3 days, for something like what I'm doing here, that is just going to be a doodle. Ultimately, it shouldn't take that long. If anything, depending on the deadline, I could just leave it as it is and work on the rest of the stuff with paint over in Photoshop and do all the the fibers and filaments that I'm trying to do in ZBrush within Photoshop. Yeah, so to change the color of these thumbnail, you just go to preferences and go to thumbnail, and you just click on this background color. So the background color is going to give you obviously the background, and the actual color of the thumbnail is determined by the main color that you have in here. So for example, if my main color, so if you're using the standard UI, the main color or the main swatch should be on the right hand side. I have it inverted just because, again, for me it's just easier. So the white color that I have here, let's put it there. This color here is the main, and this color here is the secondary. But for you guys, if you're using the standard UI, it should be swapped around. So the one on the right would be the main. So the way that it works is that this main color, that's going to be the color of that thumbnail, and the secondary color, which in this case I have it set up to be black, will be the color of the background. So if I want to make the thumbnail yellow, I just select a yellow color, and then for the background, I'm just going to select a blue color, go to preferences, and just change the background to be blue. You'll see it's sort of like inverses. I don't think it actually picks the main color, to be honest. So yeah, no, it doesn't. It just gives you the inverted. So forget about what I said about the secondary color. It's just based on the main. So whatever you choose within this background color, Siri is going to give you the inverted or the complementary color for the thumbnail. So if you want a red, thumbnail, you have to select a magenta green, almost bluish, like a cyan color, like that. Yeah, I just prefer the pure black. So that it gives me that sort of transparent color. Anyway, how do you put the face muscle? Sorry, it's already. Yeah, so all of these things, let me just cover some of the things that are always asked in every stream so that we get it out of the way. This thing that I use to do these type of things and explain things on the screen, it's called Epic Pen, and you can just get it. It's a free app. This thing in the floating head is just a custom cam view. I have a bunch of custom cam views, right? And you can create your own. It's just a matter of going to preferences and go to cam view and click make cam. So whatever you have on the screen will create a cam view. So that's how I made this one. You can make your own as well. Yeah, other than that, another thing that gets asked pretty frequently is how to have this second sort of palette. This is not actually a palette, it's part of the UI, so I can hide this palette and this will be part of the UI. And the way that you get this is within the custom UI. When you enable it, all you have to do is take one of these long buttons, like this one for example, or anything that is long, and just drag it into this area and it will just expand and you can just place more things in there. And talk about adjusting MPR filters, please. So we might do something like this. At this point, we're not doing anything to do, with rendering. So we're just gonna keep working on the sculpt so that we can actually produce something interesting that we can render, if anything. All right, so I have a bunch of subtools. What I'm going to do is create something else, something new. So let's go to append. I'm going to use cylinder into solo mode. This is going to be one of the filaments type of thing. So it's going to be pretty thin. Something like that. And then we can go ahead and, not sure, maybe Dynamesh. Yeah, let's Dynamesh that. It's relatively high res. And let's go ahead and start. I'm going to turn on symmetry. I'm going to start smoothing this area here, and with the move brush and AccuCurve, I'm going to start creating some kind of don't know, let's see, some kind of tentacle. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, I'm having a look at some of the reference here, just to see what can be done. Most of the reference that I have are kind of like from Mantis, and they seem to be kind of like a hard shell, but this one is meant to be more organic, I guess. I'm gonna use the smooth brush with a lot of pressure just to smooth this out a little bit, maybe increase the intensity of the smooth brush a bit more. Okay, and I think we might have to actually increase the size of this. Just looking at it, yeah, something like that. All right, I'm gonna give it a slide shape, kind of like a spoon type of thing. Yeah, I think something like that. And what we can do now is redynamesh this, so we can work on this area a little bit more. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on, before actually, let's see, where is it? So damp standard brush. I'm gonna turn off or turn on back face masking, so that when I work on this area like this, it doesn't get affected at the back. I mean, that was too extreme, but when I do this, you don't have any effect at the back. And I'm gonna go ahead and start adding some details here. This, I think, is gonna be ultimately pretty small compared to other pieces on the character or on the creature, but just a hint. And we're gonna have to run a remesher on this anyway, so that we can pose it properly. So I'm gonna use another brush with backface masking, and this brush is just is based on the standard brush, but it has like some settings that make it like really strong, but also gives you a lot of control if you use the lazy mouse. So I'm gonna just do a few things like this to work on the back of this thing, this tentacle. I can press the Alt key just to push things in, and just to smooth things out. So I think this one is plenty for you know, to run a serial mesher with this, and then we can just work on some more details if we wanted to, just to add you know, maybe actually let's add some kind of holes in there just to make it a bit more creepy. All right, so now I'm gonna take this with symmetry, and I'm gonna run a serial mesher at half. So currently we have 75,000 polygons. Let's run a serial mesher there. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's a pretty decent amount. I think we might have to keep doing it. So let's just do another serial mesher. Again, all of the details afterwards, we can work on those later or separately. 8,000 should be enough. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is smooth this sort of area here. Maybe bring in the inflate brush, and what I want to do is generate some kind of variation in the thickness so that it doesn't look as manufactured in a way. All right, cool. So let's see if this is going to work. So I haven't tried this, but I would assume it would work. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get out of solid mode, and I'm gonna duplicate these so that I have kind of like the original. I'm gonna call it tentacle original. What? All right, this is the name for the original anyway. Turn that off, and I'm gonna select the copy of it, and I think we can just reduce the size. Set the gizmo around there, and I'm just going to place it maybe from the back. Would be interesting. Oops, make sure symmetry is disabled. All right, so that's one, and now that this is kind of like positioned in there, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the gizmo again, click on the cog icon, and I'm gonna use the bend curve. So click on that, and because we actually haven't changed the rotation, or we haven't reset the rotation of this, we can basically tweak this based on the original axis, which you can change from this red cone here. So the red cone allows you to change the axis. So right now it is on the x-axis, so that's why the 2 points are in this fashion. And if you take the orange cone, you can increase the amount of points. So now you see they're all being created in this axis, which is currently the red one, so in the x-axis. So if you take this one and change it to z, to the z-axis, blue axis, or the y-axis to go up and down, which is what I need, we should have those points along that tentacle. So let's click on that. There we go. So now we have these 3 points. I'm just going to increase the amount to maybe something like that. I mean, the fewer points, the easier that is going to be to manipulate this actual curve. The only thing that I'm sort of like keeping an eye on is to have at least 1 point closer to this part of the tentacle so that it doesn't distort this shape as much. So if I do this, you can change this quite a bit. And so yeah, with that said, let's go ahead and tweak this. So this is a really cool way to manipulate this type of shapes and make it look very organic. It's kind of like a just a simple way to pose these more complicated shapes. And that's the other reason I duplicated that that piece. So that we can come back to kind of like that original center piece or center line and do another one. All right, now so that's kind of like one way to do it, and I think it's the easiest way, to be honest. Let's see. Trying to keep an eye on that sort of the silhouette overall. So another cool thing is, let's say if I select this point here, you have these other cones. So the orange one is your twist, so you can actually twist everything. Everything that is part of that point. You can scale it and you can squeeze it. I'm not gonna use the squeeze, but the scale is pretty good. You can do these type of things, or you can just rotate it. So in this case, I can do this and also this, and just twist that around, right? So that you have something, I don't know, a bit more interesting. And let's click on the cog icon, click accept, and that's our first tentacle. Yeah, sort of done. And we can go ahead and use other tools to further refine it. So I'm going to replicate this process with a few more. I don't know how many would be good, but let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to duplicate the original again, Gizmo 3D. Scale this down a bit. Oops, I forgot to turn on symmetry. Let's do that again. And let's place these on the other side. Cool. Let's click on the cog icon, curve, and this is one of the great things about the gizmo and the deformers, that unless you reset it, it will remember the previous settings. So straight away we have what we need, and we can start tweaking it. I'm gonna make this one more interesting, sort of like going inside this area. Let's see how that looks from this angle. So you'll see with this method you can create very complex dynamic poses, or even if it is just for like these sort of tentacles and it's not a full-on character. You could potentially do the same thing if you separate, if you're doing a more humanoid character, for instance. You can potentially separate the limbs and yeah, just use this technique for the legs, I guess, or the arms. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the twist. Too much. All right. Now the cool thing about this as well, and I'll show you maybe with the next one. Yeah. Cool. Yes. Let's go ahead and click on the cog icon to accept that. So now we have a second tentacle in there. But the cool thing about those points is that you can change them on the fly, and obviously it will change the position or the the posing. So I'm gonna do this a few more times. I'll check the chat in just a second. Not duplicate. Make sure my symmetry is off. Scale this down a bit, and I will show you something else. Let's put this one over there. Oops. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple more things with this technique. Let me just check the chat. Name of the pen app. So the pen app is called Epic Pen. Can we get your custom UI? You could. I don't know if that would work for anybody. Like, I wouldn't share this one because I have a bunch of custom macros that, unless you know what they do and what they're for, it's not gonna make any. It's not gonna work. It's not a UI that I set up for sharing. It's just a UI that I set up for my workflow, really. So unless you work exactly the same way as I do, it wouldn't work for you. No, the UI that I have is not available, just because I have, like I said, a bunch of macros. So if you go to macros in here, so this one says my macros. These are all the custom macros that I have to speed up my process, and they're part of my UI. So what tool is that? So the tool that I'm using is just a deformer called the bend curve. I'll repeat the process in just a second. Is there really any point in having a 3D head on the top right corner? Yeah, for me there is. I mean, I'm used to have it there. So again, this is my UI, so you could, just turn it off if you don't like it. I have it there as a reference. It doesn't bother me at all, and most of my time I'm doing things related to character design. So it's not just to see where I'm sort of like pointing at, but just to have a reference of the different muscle groups. And I switch between the head and a full skeleton to have like proportions, a full skull to also have the proportions, and the full body, again, just to keep an eye on the muscle groups from different angles and how they look and all that. So it's part of the UI, up to you whether or not you use it. So I guess that's another reason why I don't necessarily share this one, because it doesn't really make sense for a lot of people, just for myself. Do you have a video talking especially about deformers or similar? I would be interested if people struggle with them. Yeah. If you go to the website, to the ZBrush Guides website, there's a few of those. I have a few guides dedicated to the C-modeler, and there's actually one guide that is completely dedicated to the deformers, and specifically the project. What's the name? The project. Forgot the name already. The project primitive. So there's an entire guide about this one, which is pretty powerful. You could do that with instances. Yes, you could, but the instances, if you're referring to nanomesh, they will all look the same. So I want to have different variation in the way that they're placed. Comics Legend. Pablo, what new feature of ZBrush are you more excited about? Obviously, the cloth thingy would be amazing. What's the other one? I'll have to check. I have to check the main video. But there was a couple more things. Oh, the nanomesh. Is it nanomesh? Anyway, something that is the. I don't know. I don't remember the name. I'll have to check the video, but it just allows you. It's kind of like a nanomesh for cloth, so I think it's pretty cool as well. Do you recommend any good custom UI then? Maybe know someone got available. Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, let's go ahead and continue working on this while I talk about that in just a second. So before I answer that question, I just want to show you something else. Let's say that you have this piece there. If you go ahead and rotate it like this, and you want to start with this rotation in a way, right? You can totally do that, and the bend curve will still align through that, through that line, because we actually haven't changed the orientation of the gizmo. So you see the y-axis is still pointing in the same direction. So if I look at it from this angle, this is still good to go. So if I bring in the bend curve, and this is to answer that question of which one I'm using for the tentacle, it's called the bend curve, and it will remember all of those settings, right? And I can just keep doing the same thing. Yeah, so to answer that question about the UI, right? UI is something that is super personal in the way that, you know, there's no point copying someone's UI if you don't know what the buttons are for, or what the reason why that person built that UI. That is not to say that sometimes, you know, using someone else's UI might give you ideas for your own workflow, and you know, it might help you simplify or give you, you know, simplify your workflow, or give you ideas of how you can approach certain things in different ways. The reason I don't share this UI is not because I don't, you know, I don't want you to have it. I don't mind. I mean, I can share it. The point is, when I share this UI, half of the things, or not half of the things, but a few things won't really work for you because you don't have the macros, or you don't know why those things work the way they do. And I'm happy to show you a few things just so that you understand what I'm saying. But yeah. So with UIs, it's a very personal thing that I would recommend strongly to create your own if you want to customize it, to create your own as you progress, and you know, you understand different workflows and learn a few different things. In fact, I'm working on a massive course that some of you might remember from a few years ago. It's something that I've been developing for I don't know, about 3 or 4 years. So it's been a long time in the making, and it's called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide, right? And it's a course dedicated to, or aimed for, absolute beginners in ZBrush. And one of the focus of the course is to help you sort of understand some of the core principles and the basics, but giving you the space to create your own workflow, to understand some of the tools, but you can create your own workflow. So I'm going to be sharing relatively soon a kind of like a starter kit, or a free series of tools that if you're a beginner, you can use it, and it comes with a custom UI. That custom UI that I'm going to share, it has certain tools that I would personally recommend using or knowing straight away, and it's all based on the standard. So, or the standard, you know, there's no macros or anything like that, but it's a custom UI. So that one, that's why I'm sharing it, because I think it could help. But this one, it has a bunch of things that, you know, you might not use at all. But anyway, let's go ahead and do another one. So I'm going to duplicate. I think I want to do like 6 of these. You know, we'll see. Same process. And hopefully, I mean, you'll notice that when I scale this down, I'm not making sure that everything is exactly the same size. I'm just sort of like eyeballing it, and that just sort of helps to add a little extra bit of you know, difference between these. Let's bring in the curve again. And let's see, let's make this one a bit more complicated. All right. Oops. Set this to 0.5, I think. Yeah. All right, and I'll give you I'll show you in a second. Hang on, I think I screwed this up. So the default is 1 almost. So set it to there. All right. I'll give you an example of the UI that I'm talking about. When we used to work with clay, we used to use wooden mannequins in the exact same reason. Handy for reference. Yep, exactly. Sounds awesome. Really looking forward to that class. I guess you're referring to what I mentioned about the ultimate ZBrush guide. Yeah, so this is in case you want to know a bit more about that. I mean, it's a project that I've been working on for the past 3.5 or almost 4 years, and it's something that I started almost almost at the same time as I started the ZBrush Guides website, right? The reason it has taken so long, and it has taken me a long time to come up with something, is because I don't want to create just another course or just another tutorial or a series of resources for ZBrush, because there's a lot of content out there and it's really good, and you can just watch that. My aim with this project that I'm developing, and it's fairly, I mean, it's almost there. I still have to do a few more things, but it's the aim really is to provide a methodology, right? So I think that the focus has been in that, sort of like in creating a methodology, a systematic approach, kind of like a step-by-step that you can follow, and more importantly, that is not just something that you follow in a tutorial and then you manage to do whatever that tutorial is talking about, but then you can just go and do whatever you want in a way. So it's just giving you the basics. I mean, there's some in-depth content in what I've been developing, but yeah, I've been the most of the time that I've been developing this, I've been concentrating on the methodology and the way that you can learn ZBrush, rather than showing, oh, here is a feature and this is what it does, but in how to understand what it's actually doing, so that you can then create more, have more creative ways of using that feature, if that makes sense. So hopefully I'll explain that a bit better once I release the course, but that's roughly the idea of the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. And the reason it has taken so long is not just because of the research that I've done and the testing and the user feedback, but also because every year ZBrush comes up with amazing tools. So at the beginning I was just following a pretty basic approach, a pretty standard approach, and just going through every single feature. And I started developing that content, sort of like going, oh, here is this brush and here's this tool and this is what it does, and which is fair enough. But then I realized there's no point of me doing that, because I'm never gonna code up. As soon as I think I'm finished with the course, ZBrush is gonna come up with something else. So there's no point of me just kind of like doing that. So that's why I changed my whole approach, and now the focus is on, it has been on learning the software itself. So in a way, I'm gonna duplicate this. So in a way, the course, although it's called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, and it goes through the entire system in ZBrush, the methodology or the systematic approach that I'm sort of taking to explain certain things, it's something that can be applied to any software, and that's really how I learn new tools. I don't know if you guys saw, I recently shared something that I've been doing in Blender to to get to know it, because I think it's a fantastic and really powerful tool. I just haven't had a chance to properly work on it, or play around with it. So I recently shared something with one of the characters that we did, or that we started in the streams. The Sibotuki guy. I can show you some images in just a second, so that you know what I'm talking about. Hang on. So this guy here. So we started this in the ZBrush live sessions. So we made pretty much everything. The only thing that we didn't do were the textures and all of that, because that is just part of the the texturing process, which I did in Substance Painter. So I was using this kind of like as a guinea pig to try a few things. I wanted to test the new Substance Painter UDIM or painting across UV tiles. So this guy has a bunch of UDIMs or UV tiles, you know, that sort of thing. And this is a render from part of the testing that I was doing is a render from Blender Eve. But my point is, the way that I learn a software or a new tool is essentially the same, regardless of what the tool is. So that's what I'm trying to recreate in that ZBrush, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. It's not just about learning ZBrush, which is, you know, I mean, it's pretty obvious if you get something that is called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, but it's a methodology to learn different things, and that's kind of like the point of difference with other courses that you might find online. I guess that's the idea. So you can apply that system, you can apply those steps and that rationale, I guess, to other tools, and that's how I learn myself. And I think, you know, you could also, like, if you're interested, you could also take advantage of that. But anyway, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet, but it will hopefully be ready soon. And I will share something when it's ready. And if you're interested, or you know someone that might be interested or might benefit from it, I will let you know, or you can tell them to subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll let them know by email. But anyway, that's just to give you an idea of the big project that I'm working on at the moment, and that's the only reason it has taken so long. And if you have followed or know about the ZBrush guides for a while, you might remember that I sort of created a page or a website for it called the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, and I started working on that. And you know, a lot of people actually subscribed to that to get notified when it was ready, but that was ages ago, and that's the reason why I haven't finished it, because, like I said, ZBrush keeps updating the software with amazing stuff. So I changed my whole approach to you know, focus more on the methodology. But of course, at the end, we end up doing, in the course, we're gonna end up doing a pretty cool character, and you know, bunch of tips and tricks and tools like I've been showing you in here. But it's more about, you know, taking a new tool and being able to run with it and do your own designs, your own concepts, your own characters, and not just, you know, what it's said in the tutorial in a way. All right. Do you ever use the snake hook brush? Yes, all the time. I mean, probably not in this. I have it here as part of my essential brushes anyway. So, oops, let me just go ahead and do something. I just noticed a line that is a bit too straight, and because I have already accepted that curve, I need to rely on the move brush. We're just going to do little notches there. All right, let's go ahead and do one more. I'm gonna keep the original, so I'm gonna duplicate this one more time and drop the original in the original folder. Turn on symmetry, turn off symmetry, and let's scale that down. So that's gonna be the other piece here for the other side. Maybe smaller than that. Cool. And let's use the bend curve. All right. So that's gonna be the last one of these tentacles. Let's see from this angle. Let's try to pose this in an interesting way. Alrighty. And you know, in some cases, you might think like, you know, depending on how this is moving, or you know, how it's being affected by gravity, you might want to consider all of those things. But the reason I'm just being a little bit more loose in the way that I pose this thing is just because I'm imagining it kind of like living in a tank, sort of like preserved in alcohol or something. So it might not be alive, but you know, these things are floating about. I don't know. That's part of the reason I'm doing this type of posing. All right. Cool. I think we're there with these tentacles. So let's click on the cog icon, click accept, and let's do a quick save. And you'll see that even though they're still not detailed enough, and I don't think I'm going to detail them as much, so this is just a quick concept, this is already starting to look a lot more interesting than what we had before, and a lot more detailed. And we're going to use some maybe FiberMesh to add some further tentacles along this, you know, yeah, along the tentacles, or fibers along the tentacles. So that's going to be interesting. But let's go ahead and tweak these insertion points. So I'm going to select this one, push it down a bit, this one, push it in a bit. I'm going to select the body, and I'm going to use the inflate brush just to inflate some of this area, these parts here. Just to create some mass of the body here to justify that, you know, that these pieces could be in there. And I'm gonna re-dynamesh this. Hang on, this is not a dynamesh. No, it is. There we go. And maybe use the clay brush here around this. So here's where we had a good base for the sketch, but this is the type of things that where I start to think about, you know, how this actually could work, and think about the functionality of the design. So if these tentacles are that long and they're not just like, you know, flimsy little things, they could actually work for something, and the character could use them, or this creature could use them for something. There probably needs to be some kind of a volume here to justify placing them there. So that's what I'm trying to do, just add more mass. I mean, there could be, you know, control by some sort of organic hydraulic system, and just, you know, fluids, kind of like an exoskeleton type of thing, but this is very organic, so that's why I'm adding these parts. So going to solo mode to refine this. You can press Alt and just push this in a bit. All right, not too bad. Cool. Let's see what could be the next one. Hang on. Just going to refine this a bit more. There we go. We can use something like maybe insert brushes to add a few extra stuff for the kind of like the main part of the bottom of this creature, and then we do some FiberMesh. Let's see how we're doing with time. Yeah, we're gonna have time. So yeah, I reckon we can do that. Let's see. So if you were doing an FMD print, would you thicken tentacles, etc.? I guess I don't have a lot of experience with 3D printing. I usually the few things that I have printed, or that you know, some people have printed for me, I generally just set up the print and they deal with the rest. So let's say like setting up keys or hollowing, things like that. So it depends, I guess, on the size that you want to print this. So I wouldn't necessarily thicken these, but I would separate them in, you know, or print them separately and then just attach them or glue them together afterwards. Hi Pablo, do you think that the concept art 3D with cartoon character is good for video games industry? Yeah, I guess, Christian, I guess what you're asking is if whether or not pursuing a style, or I don't know if that's the question, like if cartoonish style would be relevant for the video games industry. If that's the question, I would say yes, like there's plenty of room for that. I'm not sure if that's the question, sorry. I mean, if that's what you're asking. No worries, Bruce. Glad that you find that trick with the bend curve useful. Just keep in mind that once you accept it, that's it. So if I select one of these tentacles, whichever I use, go into solo mode, go into the gizmo, and enable bend curve. Now this bend curve is going to be based on the entire volume of this curve. So you can still use it. It's just not going to be as handy because the points are not going to be following that specific curve. So one thing you can do is not accepting that modifier. So for example, if I take this, let's duplicate it one more time. So this is just another one. Let's bring in the bend curve and do something like that, right? And maybe I can show you a couple more things. So at this point, you have something that you're happy with. Let's say this is the hang on there. This is the shape that you're going for. If you change the resolution, you won't actually change the curvature. So you can start with less points, like these ones, right? And be able to control the curve a lot more, because obviously you have less points, it's going to be easier. It's kind of like blocking. And then you can just increase this a lot more, right? And now you can, you know, manipulate other areas like so, right? And then, you know, keep reducing it, modifying things. So it's really, really handy in that way. Okay. Now, if I click on the cog icon and click accept, that's it. I'm just accepting those changes. If I just switch to the Gizmo 3D, right, I can move this around, place it. Let's say I want to make it, you know, sticking out of the head or something like that. But because I haven't accepted the changes, I can actually come back and you see that the cog icon is actually a yellow color. And I click on that, click on bend curve, and I can come back and keep tweaking it, right? So you don't have to accept the changes. I just did it because I don't know, that's what I'm used to do. But yeah, so you don't have to do it. You don't have to click accept. You can just use bend curve and please switch to Gizmo 3D. If you don't accept though, as soon as you switch to another modifier, it's gonna change things. So if I change to bevel, so now if I go back to the curve, you'll see it loses that that ability. So just be aware of that. I'm gonna delete that one. Cool. Do you ever plan on exporting 3D printing? Yeah, I've done that. I don't know, this guy, is that your question? This one that I'm currently working on? I'm not particularly interested. I mean, it would be cool. I haven't thought about it really. What's the best way to have a point of reference for a relatively scale of a model? You could have a I mean, when I'm working with a specific scale, I have tools set up for that already. So I set that in whatever other package I'm using with ZBrush, set up the reference model, the reference object in there, bring it to ZBrush and use that as a reference. To give you an idea, if I go to project tool, so if I double click on this just to load this one, this is an avatar that I use as reference for the size for Marvel's Designer. So I can just load that up, and it's just a human character that has the right size, and everything is already set up for that specific workflow of ZBrush and Marvel's Designer. So I don't know, that's how it works. You could also use the scale master, or it's called the scale master, this one here, to find out the scale of whatever you have in here. Also, you can use the transpose master. So if I turn off the gizmo, sorry, not the transpose master, the transpose line, you can click and drag, and that would give you a rough idea in terms of units. So this one is 14,000 units, as you can see here at the top. Can you see that actually? Yeah. So the transpose line sort of helps us as a way to measure things within ZBrush. And if you want to know what those two generic units are in in a more conventional way, so whether they're centimeters or millimeters or whatever, that's what this scale master is for, just to figure that out. I don't know if that's the question, but there's different ways to do it. I personally prefer to just set everything on whatever the end package would be. So if I'm working with, if I have to do something for Maya or Blender now that I'm learning it, or that sort of thing, I would set it up there, bring it to ZBrush, use it as a reference, and then end up in there. My question is, can I work like a 3D concept artist with video games, only use 3D concept? Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, that's as a concept artist, I guess you can work for anything really. No, it doesn't have to be video games. You don't have to limit it to video games, but yeah, absolutely. All right, let's work on a couple more things for this guy. So I'm gonna go ahead and append. Let's see. I'm gonna append a cylinder. Go into solo mode, and this is gonna be some sort of spike, or just another extra limb or something like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and use the deformers again. So for this one, we can use the taper deformer, and I use this all the time to produce shapes like this, like claws or fangs or something like a bullet. And you can use the white cone to adjust the profile of that curve, so like the fall of that curve. I'm gonna leave it as it is. Click OK. Maybe scale this a bit more, and let's bring in the, instead of the bend curve, I'm gonna use the bend arc. I'm just gonna give it a slight twist, not a twist, a slight curvature like that. Accept, and I'm just gonna reset this. All right, I think that works. And let's see. I mean, this is not a lot of geometry, but I guess we can tweak it a little bit. I'm gonna use the C modeler. I'm gonna add a loop in there, and let's see. Let's leave it like that. I mean, it doesn't have to have a bunch of details. We can do that afterwards. But what I can do is use the move brush with a large brush and AccuCurve, and then just make it look a bit more organic than just some imperfections. It has to be subtle so that it doesn't look like is just badly done. So it needs to look intentional. Okay, so something like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and from this angle, maybe a little bit more like that. I'm gonna click on the brush palette, click on create insert mesh, click new, and now we have an insert brush for this type of things. You'll see this thumbnail that I have here on my UI. That's something that you can get from the brush palette. And under the depth, and this one is really handy because you can just push this down and it basically changes the insertion point of that. So you see now it is more embedded like that. So that's kind of like what I want, maybe not that much. Yep. And then, so that's kind of like editing this insert brush. And then you can variate the intensity. So right now it is 100%. So if I set it to 27%, you'll see it becomes kind of like more like that, which is not necessarily what I want, but you know, the possibility is there. Another thing is that if you scale and then you keep going like this, and then you, without letting go of the click, you go back, Series is going to just scale it in all the axes but the one that you sort of inserted in a way. So again, that's just like, you can click and drag to add these things, or you can click and drag, then without letting go of the click, you can go back, and you'll see that the length is maintained, but now it's like really thin. So you can create these very thin pieces like that, or just the thick ones. That's why I didn't make this too long. So this is what I'm going to do, this type of spiky thing all over the character. So yeah, let's go ahead and push this one to the original folder. Not interested in that. Let's go out of solo mode, and I think the only place that we have subdivisions is in the tail, which is the place we actually want to add those things, or that I want to add those. So what I'll do is something that it's actually pretty handy, and I've shown it before here in the streams, but I will append a mesh, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. So in this case, just a terrain 3D. I'm going to convert that into a QQ, which is super simple. And right now, if I enable this transparency, you'll see that cube sort of like lives within the mesh. You can just make it smaller or put it outside, you know, at the top or at the bottom. Doesn't really matter. It's just a dummy mesh that we're going to use as a subtool to drag in those inserted meshes. So it doesn't matter if you have you know, subdivision level, or it doesn't matter what else you have in here. It's just going to be appended to that actual cube, but obviously Series respects the volumes. So I'm gonna go ahead and start here. So you could potentially do this with a VDM as well. But you know, this is just another fun way to do it. So we're just focusing on making this creature even more creepier. And we can actually let's do, no, actually this is fine. I was going to hide a few of these, but we actually need those to have them as a reference of what we're doing or where we're placing these bits. Another way, I'll show you the other technique in just a second, but another way is to utilize this as a curve. So you can just draw a curve and draw all of these things based on that curve, which is also super handy. But yeah, I'm not gonna do that just because I think it's easier to not easier. In fact, the curve itself is a lot easier than this, but this is just helpful to know exactly in what areas we're placing things. And because this part is sort of like twisting around itself, I can sort of know where I'm placing all of that. And I'm keeping an eye on the polygon count, which is still super low, so we can, you know, do more of these things. And as I get closer to the end, I'm gonna make them a little bit longer and thinner, so that I sort of maintain that visual language in a way, with the bottom sort of like tapering towards the bottom. So you'll see, just like that, it looks a lot more detailed and complex and more creepy. I'm gonna do the other side as well. And this is what I really like about concepting and working in ZBrush. Like, at this point, I'm not even worried about, you know, how this is going to work in, you know, if I needed to do a retopology for this. I'm just trying to present an idea and and sell that concept, just to make sure that it works and everything else. I'm not worried about any you know, any technicalities. And the placement is a little bit random, but it doesn't matter. We can tweak it afterwards. And what I'm thinking is that we could potentially merge all of these together as a Dynamesh, maybe, or even with the Boolean operation, and then just smooth all of this. But I think Dynamesh could work fine. I mean, some of the details, it will have to be a pretty high res Dynamesh anyway, but it's not a big deal. Again, this is just a concept. All right, clear the mask, and now we have this creepy thing happening. But of course, the transition between all of these and that is not, and the pieces is not super clean, or it could be improved a lot more, unless, you know, we wanted to keep this as a separate sort of material and not being part of it. You know, if that was the case, what I would do is to go over each part. Say, let's subdivide this one more time and just go over all of these pieces, and then just add some mesh like that, or some volume, so that it feels like they could actually be coming out from the, you know, like, I don't know, some teeth or something coming out of the thing, which is, you know, it's one way to do it. I don't know if I want to do that, so I'm gonna undo that. I think I'm gonna just go for a high res concept sculpt and then just merge all of these together. So we do that, and then we move into some Dynamesh, some FiberMesh, and add some more details. Let me just check the chat. Cool design. Fair enough. Hey Nayan, hey Dive Design, hey Evo, how's it going? Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do now is merge a few things together. So I'm gonna hide. Let's see. Let's take this body. I'm gonna create a new folder. I wanna call it body. And in the body, I'm gonna put everything that I wanna merge. So the tail, the body itself, And where is this part, right? So I can hide everything and just turn on this group. All right, so this is what I'm trying to merge together and combine into a single mesh. Before I do that, actually, let's take this, and I'm just gonna do a larger one, couple of larger ones there, just to match the other side. And in fact, let's just do a few more here, kind of like feature pieces. That sounds good. All right, so we can go ahead and take this cog icon from the folder. Remember, all of these pieces are within this folder, and I can merge visible, or merge folder like this, and that would turn off this folder, and it will create this single piece. So now this is a single piece, and when you turn everything back on, except these ones. These ones, I don't want that. Yeah, I'm actually gonna delete that one. All right. So now this is a single piece. Oops, not that one. This whole body is a single piece, and you'll see that when I did the merging, ZBrush automatically deleted the lowest subdivision level that I had for the tail bit, and sort of applied that, which is fine. So what I want to do now is run a Dynamesh process. So where are we? Dynamesh, right? I have it here on my UI, but I'll show you what I'm doing. So if I just go ahead and click on Dynamesh right now at 128, that actually is not too bad. We could potentially increase the resolution a little bit more. Let's see, 312. All right, so that sort of keeps the volumes a bit more. And now we can switch to the smooth brush, the smooth strong brush, and that allows us to smooth things a little bit faster, especially when we have a large resolution like this. And I'm gonna also use this custom clay brush, right? And I'm gonna add a few volumes. And now we have a sketch with a resolution that could work a lot better for details. And what I'll do is just start smoothing these areas so that it looks more integrated. And I'm going to try to do this a little bit faster here. And here's where I can start, integrating those shapes from the original body with that tail. And just think about, what could be under these areas. So I'm just thinking some kind of a latissimus dorsi around here could work, or like, that shape. All right. Let's go ahead and smooth some of these more. Just want to make it subtle so that it doesn't, it preserves sort of that spiky look, but it also, it feels more part of the actual tail, because right now they just look like insert brushes, right? And insert brushes are really good, really cool for this type of stuff, but it's important to always make sure that they look integrated, or that they look part of what you're trying to do, rather than just a bunch of objects like a kit bash sort of thing. All right. Let's see. I think we've covered most of it. Maybe here at the back. All right. Cool. So we have we have something a bit more interesting. I'm gonna probably work on the head a bit more. And again, this is just clay brush, nothing fancy here. It's the same clay builder brush. It's just it has a few tweaks that work for me. So you see less of that alpha. So the alpha is still there, the same alpha that the clay builder brush uses, but there's less gap between the instances that are drawn, so you see less of that sort of pattern. All right. I'm going to go into solo mode here and just try to refine these volumes a bit more. Alrighty, here at the top, I forgot this part. Alright, maybe integrate this one a little bit more. Again, these ones are kind of like more feature pieces, so we could potentially spend more time just integrating them a little bit more. Just giving them a bit more structure. Cool. All right. Of course, this still looks like, you know, very basic, the insertion of these pieces. So we can start by adding a few things like with the damp standard brush. Let's see how we're doing with time. Yeah, we have time for the FiberMesh. So we can just bring in that sort of like idea of these spikes having some kind of a more rigid, more rigid structure in a way. So they would potentially produce some sort of wrinkles coming from whatever they placed. And this also will help with the idea of a more organic shape, I guess. So just varying the intensity of that. So this is something that would take time and it's pretty repetitive, so I'm probably not gonna do it all the way. Just want to show you the idea, and then if I have time at some point I will go through it and complete the concept. But that's yeah, that would be the next step, I guess, just to refine the way that they're integrated. So you'll see that this side already looks a little bit better with just a few strokes than this side that is kind of like clean. And then I can just take something like, let's use the standard brush, and then just add volume to that. We can also use the inflate brush, want something a bit faster. So it's sort of like doing what I showed you before, that is kind of like creating mass around these spikes, but because they're already integrated with the body, they feel a little bit more organic. I don't know, a bit more part of the body. And it's like anything, it just takes time. The longer that you play with this and the more that you refine it, the better it will look. But we don't have a lot of time to go through all of this, and again, it's a pretty repetitive thing. So we can use something, by the way, we can use something like, I'm gonna bring in So my custom brushes, just to speed up the process of this, just to do this sort of like wrinkles and stuff. But of course this one will affect the spikes. Now the cool thing about this is when we did the Dynamesh, we can keep the groups, right? So we have groups for all of those pieces, so we can potentially mask everything. So I'm gonna hide. All right, so I'm gonna hide all of that. I'm gonna invert that mask, sorry, that visibility, and assign a single polygroup so that I know all of this is the same polygroup. And I'm gonna mask this, bring back the rest, invert that mask, control, and oh no, oh no, I lost my tablet. Hang on, I'm gonna do a quick save, and I'm gonna reset my tablet. Oh no, the entire computer is gone. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to reset it. Let's see, 1 second. Didn't do anything. All right, give me 1 second. I'll be back in just a second. All right, cool. So I just resetted the whole thing. Let me just check the chat before we go into this. Yeah. So I had this masked, right? I'm gonna invert that mask. I know, actually, yeah, let's leave it as it is. Let's invert that mask, and I'm gonna click on the mask once, holding Control, twice, just to smooth out. Yeah, just to smooth out the transition between the mask and the unmasked areas. I'll check the chat in a second, and then I'm gonna use this to speed up this process of adding wrinkles to this part. And I'm gonna also change to the smooth brush that preserves some of those volumes as well. I'll do this very quickly. It's not usually what I would do in this situation, but I'm afraid that there's some issues with the tablet right now. So even by rotating the camera, let's see some of the questions. Maybe I can talk about any of those while I'm doing this. How do you UV all the spikes? I would probably split them if I needed to. I guess I didn't think about that when I combine them, but you know, they still have like polygroups, so you can just split them. This is really hard to work like this with the tablet not working properly, but all right. Yeah, so I guess you can just split those because you still have the polygroups, so you can split that, and then just run another Dynamesh just on the spikes, maybe do a ZBrush yeah, and then just use the polygroups that each spike has to split it. If you want to keep it kind of like as I have it right now, if I were to just do the UVs on this guy as it is, I would also use those polygroups and then just create a cut around that area. It would be a pretty annoying process of UVing them, but again, I didn't think about that necessarily because this is just an idea and a concept. And if I had to do this in a kind of like a production mesh, then I would potentially, just think more about the placement, and this could also be done with some sort of separate mesh or dynamics or just a better geometry or a better workflow, a better flow of topology. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do a few more details here, but again, it's pretty hard because the pressure is not working properly and my pen is not responding. But we'll work with what we have. All right. So another thing we can do, I'm gonna keep bringing some of these assets just because it's gonna be easier. I'm gonna add some imperfections to the surface. And all of these brushes are the skin brushes that I have on the website. So if you're interested in them, you can just get them from there. So yeah, all I'm doing is just adding a bit of noise or imperfections to the surface, which you can also do with the standard brush. All of the brushes that I share online are just ways to speed up certain things and certain processes, like adding pores and that sort of thing, but it's not, it's not essential. They're just things that work for me and that I share, hopefully, or hoping that it would also work for you guys. But you can totally do this without any custom brush or anything. So just to speed up the process. So this one, for example, is just the lip detailer. So it's just to detail lips. So the properties of this brush and the alpha and everything that it uses are, well, it is created purely for that purpose, but you can utilize it to add these sort of things. There's another one for the neck that could work nicely here. So with a larger brush size. So this one is for the neck, but it could also produce some nice details in a controlled fashion. So again, it's just ways to speed up the workflow. And I'll show you some of the things. I think someone asked why. So the reason I have like these custom UIs and stuff, and why this dynamic to sub DEs or object smooth and that sort of thing. I'll show you what that is in my custom UI, in case you want to recreate it. Also gonna bring in the skin port double action. Just add a bit of that to the head. So I'm pressing the Alt key. So this is a brush that I use for pores. Let me just show you the effect. So if I do this, it just creates pores, and it has a double action inbuilt in it so that it smooths things as you press harder and add more over the same stroke. But all of these brushes can be used in different ways. So I can hold the Alt key and produce the same sort of spikes, right? Like pretty strong. So I'm just using that to add a bit of transition here with these other spikes. So you'll see we've spent probably less than 10 minutes doing those details on the body, and that is just the, I guess, the important thing to remember, that doing details in ZBrush is such an easy thing, because you have the brushes, you have alphas, you have all the tools at your disposal to create details very easily. But what's important is to get the main shapes right, the primary shapes, the secondary shapes, the volume, the silhouette, all of that right before you go into this stage. All right, I'm gonna add a few more here, a bit more intense. And here as well. We can also add some bumps as well. Let's use this bumpy basic. So you'll see, even though these brushes are meant to be used for, you know, skin or character skin, they can also be used for creatures. And the same thing goes for any other, maybe for example this mole. Yeah, it could be something, some kind of growth, something interesting here for the head. All right, let's see how everything is looking. Let's clear the mask. Actually, before I clear the mask, I wanted to do something else. I'm gonna invert the mask, right? And I'm gonna use the inflate brush, or the inflate slider here, just to see if I can inflate things a bit more. So that they feel less like a, you know, like a spike, and more like a mini tentacle, so it's more smooth towards the tip of this. So let's see. Actually, let's invert that, and I'm gonna use the smooth, sorry, the smooth, just to smooth that top part a bit more. All right, so you see, it's kind of like those very stumpy pieces. Yeah, I think that works. All right, so let's see how everything looks together. And we can, you know, follow the same idea with these pores and this stuff that we use on other pieces for this. So we can go ahead and dynamesh that with a high resolution. And in this case, I don't wanna use the back facing, because whatever pores we push in here, we might get them on the other side like this. So that's kind of like a nice mistake in a way. All right, let's do this one. You see, this is very sketchy, but we could add some poly paint and render it out, and that's gonna be an interesting concept. All right, I think I need to work on the mouth of this character, just making something creepy here. Before I do, we have 15 minutes to do FiberMesh, but that's plenty of time for FiberMesh. Yeah, this is something really disgusting and creepy. Let's use the clay brush to add more volume here. and we can actually use this to add some kind of jaws. There, and control click and drag to duplicate. And maybe another one smaller. Alright, so those are like last minute decisions. Let's mask that, embed the mask, and we can use the move brush to adjust some of this. Alright, I think that's disgusting enough for this creature. Let's do the FiberMesh very quickly. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go into solo mode. Actually, let's use this one as a starting point, because remember, the FiberMesh will remember the settings that you use. So I'm gonna mask an area like this. Hang on. I actually need to go to the brush palette, go to auto masking, hold control, and I'm gonna use the back face masking for the control, so that I can I can mask this without going to the other side. This is only the area that I'm interested in. Let's go to FiberMesh, preview, and I'm gonna turn off this double switch so that it only creates fibers in one side of the polygon, so based on the normals. And I'm gonna remove gravity, not interested in gravity. Remove the amount of polygons, and I'm gonna change the color. And I'm gonna again reduce this number of fibers, increase the coverage, and I'm gonna increase the segments as well. Need to keep reducing this. And also, I don't want to have fibers. I mean, I'm using fibers, but I don't want to have fibers. I want to have like mini tentacles. So I'm going to increase the profile. I'm going to skip this. Increase the profile to maybe 6, and increase the coverage a bit more. So you see that they're like kind of tiny tentacles. We can reduce this a bit more. I think that's fine. We can focus more on the area, so we can use the by mask to focus the effect to the mask areas a bit more. All right, that works. We can remove the twist, and we can go ahead and set the width profile so that we have something similar to the ones that we created for the body, right? And I think that works perfect. The other thing, the other thing that we can do is play with the where is it? The gravity variation, so the direction variation. So at 0.05, that's what we get. With 0 variation, it's gonna shoot straight out from the normal. But if I add a bit more, you see, maybe that is too much. Let's leave it as it is, 0.05, so that we can wrap up today. All right, so now we can go ahead and accept that. Select the original, clear the mask, select this bit, and then we can use something like, and I'm going to use this shaper. So again, these are custom brushes that I created for just the specific purpose of using FiberMesh. They're also available if you want them in the ZBrush Guides website. If you don't want to get them, you can still do the same thing that I'm going to do with probably, which one would be a good one? The toss, this one, the groom hair toss, right? So you can do this. The only reason that I created these custom brushes is so that you can have more control over certain things. I'm gonna set the tolerance to 5. And for example, this one that is sort of intersecting with the mesh, I would use another one like this flyaway compiler, and that is just kind of like taking the topology into account, so it only moves the one that you originally touched. But yeah, that's really the reason why I have those custom brushes, and it is the same thing for most of the custom brushes that I use, just to speed up this type of workflow. But you can do the same thing with the brushes that come with ZBrush anyway. Just in case you're interested, they're available. I think this one is like $10 or $15, can't remember. All right. So now that I have this weird looking thing in there, I'm gonna select another one, go into solo mode. We have about 10 minutes, so hopefully we can do this. Preview. We don't have the right. This is a different subtool. So what I'll do is select this subtool that I created this, so this one would have the actual things, and I'm gonna save this and save it. Save it there, and now I can go to the one that I was doing, enable that and open. So there we go. Oops. Right, let's click accept, clear that mask. Let's go ahead and repeat the process before I go ahead and tweak all of the fibers. Fiber, open, accept. So that's just a quick way to let's select this one. A quick way to reuse the settings of the fibers, just like saving them and then open them. If you're using the fibers within the same subtool, they will ZBrush will remember the settings, but because I'm using different subtools for all the tentacles, then I won't have any of that. All right. Let's click open. All right, this one needs more. There, and we have one more. Where is it? This one. Oops. Yeah, it needs more as well. All right, accept. Done. So now we have those spikes, and we can use again this palette here, use this bender, and go through all of those pieces, just to add a bit more variation. Maybe these ones were a little bit too long, but hang on, that's not the one. There we go. These are a little bit long, but you know, it works. It works with the creepy effect that we're going for. Imagine get trapped by this thing. I mean, I think the scale that I'm working at the moment is relatively tiny, but I mean, just, I don't know, being swimming in a river and don't know that this thing is sort of like lurking on the ground and just grabbing you. It'll be cool. All right. So I think that's it. Maybe this one, we haven't tweaked that. So one of the main differences, for example, with this brush and well, I mean, without customizing them, is that the effect is a little bit more subtle. So you see, as I tweak this, you have more of a control effect, and you can do the same thing with the current brush, with the standard brushes, and just tweak it. But you know, that's the whole point of doing this customization, that they're ready to go. Alrighty, so we are pretty much done with those creepy parts. Another thing we can do though is, we have about 5 minutes, we can do a few more spikes in here. So let's take this body, and I'm gonna go ahead and mask this area to produce some sort of, I don't know, some kind of gradient to the rest of the body with spikes. Like that. And I know that the chat is being active. I'll just check it in just a second. Just want to make sure I finish this extra tip before the end of today's stream to wrap up this concept. Alright, so let's click on preview. I'm gonna open the fibers. But of course, in this case, the area is it's a bit more. So I'm gonna tweak that, just changing the amount of fibers, the length as well. Making sure that this is not double. Alright, so that kind of works. Let's go ahead and click accept. Nope. Alright. And now we can use, I'm going to use this shaper to give it a bit of shape. That's what the shaper is ultimately for. Some initial shape. I think I don't want to create something very complex with this. Just additional details. And the reason I don't use kind of like the gravity of the original fibers, so from the settings of the FiberMesh, is because, you know, once I start tweaking the fibers, I'm gonna edit that anyway, so there's no point, or like the twist or anything like that. So there's no point of just trying to get a good looking FiberMesh from the settings if I'm going to edit them anyway. Alright, I think that's it. I mean, we can just use a little bit of turbulence though. I'm gonna do subtle turbulence here, so that it's not perfectly straight after using that tool. And perhaps I'm gonna clump a few of these, so they're not like, you know, they're kind of like fibers clumping together like hair in a way. All right, I think that's good enough. Cool. And one last thing that I want to do, maybe, I feel like this guy, although not having eyes is creepy enough, I think I want to add some eyes to it. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to append, just to wrap up, I'm going to append a cube, go to Q-cube, and this time I'm going to use the primitives, the insert primitives. I'm going to select a sphere like this, and I'm going to go ahead and push this almost halfway in, and I'm going to add maybe more like that, like this. Yes, maybe now that looks silly, but maybe like this. Just want to add a few like eyes. There we go. We can use dynamic for this so that they look a little bit more, a little bit better. And then just to finish up, finalize, some final touches here. Let's use the standard brush. And I know this is a little bit, bit fast to do this, but how about the things that I show you? I would probably, in a real environment, I would spend a bit more time. But this shows both the workflow, I guess, the process, and the tools that I would use for something very similar. So that's what matters, I guess. All right. So there we go. It's kind of like a creepy bunny creature type of thing. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick save. Maybe let's throw a quick render. Let's quick save first. Do a quick render and see if I can answer some of those questions in the chat before we wrap up, because my time is up. Why not use deformation for the smooth on the spikes? For the smoothing? Yes, I think that's what I did. I used the deformation palette, if that's what you mean. Have you ever modeled a robot mech character? Yeah, plenty of those. Like if you check my ArtStation, there's a few things in there. In fact, there are a couple that we did during these live sessions. Let me see. I can show you. And by the way, if you go to the ZBrush guides right now, I mentioned this last week, I think, but I'm currently trying to optimize it, so hopefully it's gonna work a little bit faster. But if you go to the ZBrush guides website, the brushes, I'm still like, there's a few images that are still missing because we're in the process of migrating things again and optimizing it, but it should work a little bit better. If you go to my portfolio, I don't know if I linked to the thing, but so this mecha, we worked on this character on the live streams. There are a couple more that might be of interest for you, like this hard surface. This is another thing that we did, or that we started in the live streams. This other one, well, this one is not from live stream, but yeah, some mecha creatures, characters, this type of thing. So yeah, these sort of creatures. This one is something that I did for to practice or to figure out this polygrouped, which was really awesome. Again, this one was done in the ZBrush live. So these are the process of iteration. So that's the mecha. I don't know if that's what you're asking. And this one as well is part of the some of the ZBrush live. So yeah, just to wrap up, if you go to the resources, to the ZBrush brushes, you can get the FiberMesh grooming kit that I was showing you if you're interested in that. If you're interested in the skin, you can click skin here, and all of these ones are free, so you can try those. If you want the full pack or another type of brushes, you can click on this, the skin brushes pack, and that will send you to that. I think I only use these two today, the skin and the FiberMesh. Anyway, there are a few other ones that you can try if you want. There is a sculpting hairstylized bundle that you can download. This is free as well. Yeah, so this is the skin pack. So it just tells you what the brushes are and what they're used for. But again, today I show you like how to use those for a different scenario, for a creature. So it's up to you. All right. You said last time, how do you apply Geometry HD to mesh? I said it last time. I think I mentioned it last time, but there's no point of adding HD geometry to this. Can you show it by applying it mesh now? Yeah, I mean, we don't really have much time, but there's nothing weird about using HD geometry. You can just, I'll show you in a sphere then. So this is just a normal sphere. You can go ahead and add a couple of subdivisions. Well, actually, let's just make it a polysphere. It's really tiny, but it's okay. All right, so I can just do a couple of subdivisions to 6,000, maybe one more, right? So that's the normal subdivision approach. The HD geometry is exactly the same thing. There's nothing weird about the process. You can just go to geometry HD after you have a few subdivision levels, and then just pay attention to the active points. I'm gonna click HD, sorry, not the active point, the total points. So now I have 90,000, again 300, and again 1 million polygons. So in the normal subdivision approach, you have 4 subdivision levels, but then you have 3 subdivision levels in HD. And if you want to sculpt in HD, you can just click on this button here. And right now I'm currently in HD mode, so I can, hang on, let's press A. Hang on, let me just show you. All right, so right now I'm only seeing the 4 levels of subdivision. If I want to access HD geometry, you can just hover over the mesh, whatever you're working on, press A, and that will bring that sort of like tunnel vision. So the HD is only applied in this area, but you see it just goes through the other side. It's kind of like shooting a tube of HD geometry. And now you can do as many details in HD as you want. And if this is not enough for you, you can just get out, do another subdivision level, get in again with A, smooth all of that. Now there's 6 million polygons, right? So you can do a lot of details, and then when you get out by pressing A again, it just shows you the maximum level that you have in the normal subdivision. So in order to edit this, you'll have to get into this sculpting mode. So hopefully that helps. Why were the spikes not keeping a body as separate? You can keep it as a separate subtool, of course. Is there a way that you can take a subtool and realign it to 0 so you can go back to symmetry? Yeah, you can. You can just let's say you can take that. By the way, the only way to delete HD geometry is to duplicate the mesh. So see, I have the 4th subdivision level. If I duplicate that, then it loses the geometry, the HD geometry, so I can delete that, and I still have the normal subdivision level. So I think your question is, if you have something like this and then you move it around and rotate it like this, is there a way to sort of go back to 0 and play around with the bad rotation? There's 2 ways to do it. You can just click on the rotation itself, and it will just reset the rotation of the entire model. If you don't want to move the model but you want to reset the pivot, you can hold the Alt key or press this lock icon. So pressing the lock icon allows you to manipulate the gizmo without affecting the mesh. So unlocking it, you can click this and it will just reset that. And if you want to send it to the center of the world, just press that icon there. Or if you don't want to move the the character or whatever you're working on, you can do the same thing and just send the pivot to the center of the world. But yeah, I don't know if that's the question. Hopefully that answers it. Pablo, you can UV the body and sculpt using Morph UV. Yep, you can do that. How to bend that body? Do you use curve mesh? No, that's in the previous stream, so you can watch that. What we did, we used C-spheres for that. No worries. Glad that you like it, Citizen Null. Cool. Heiko, are you in New Zealand? No, I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Cool. Alrighty. No worries, guys. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it here because I'm already 10 minutes over my time. Hopefully you find this session useful. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I mean, this is already pretty much what I wanted to do. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can go ahead and sculpt and add detail. Like the arms are pretty basic, right? But you can sort of tell what this creature is and the idea of what this is. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna probably do a quick render to show you the final result, but next time we can work on something else. So I'm also I'll accept some suggestions. I'll put a question in Instagram. If you follow me there, you can maybe help me with some suggestion for the next stream and tell me what you want to see. All right, guys, I'm gonna leave it here, and I'll see you next week.